Hello crafty friends, it's Heather Rui here for ReverseConfetti, and we will be creating this rainbow card today. I also want to share some tips along the way for beating creative block. I was experiencing creative block when I went to make this card and thought I'd share a few things that helped me in hopes that it will help you too. The first tip I have to beat creative block is to organize your supplies. I spent some time opening my products, putting them in storage pockets, and labeling them. This always seems to jumpstart my creativity. Okay, let's start creating the card. I started by die cutting the Folklore cover panel from white cardstock. I love the detail pattern it creates. This comes to my second creative block tip. Let the products inspire you. I noticed that there were 6 columns in the pattern of the cover plate, and I thought that would be perfect for rainbow stripes. So I masked off each section with Post-it tape and ink blended each section with Distress Oxide ink. I like using Distress Oxide inks because they are so easy to blend. I started with candy apple and applied a heavy amount of ink to the first column that was masked off. I moved on to spice marmalade and repeated the process. Next, I used fossilized amber. I like to tap off the ink on scratch paper first to avoid any harsh lines. The next color I used was Lucky Clover, then on to Blueprint Sketch, and wrapped up the rainbow with Wilted Violet. Next, I flicked water on top of the ink using the nozzle of my Distress sprayer. And since Distress Oxide inks reacts with water, it added more interest and texture. My third creative block tip is to stamp and die cut all the images from your stamp set. Even if you don't use all the pieces on your project, you can save the extra pieces along with the stamp set for a future card. I did this with the Love Win stamp set from ReverseConfetti. I stamped all the images at once and used the coordinating dies to cut them out. I like to die cut the images before coloring them. Sometimes I will not have the die lined up correctly when die cutting the image out. I would rather have that happen after stamping instead of stamping and coloring. I also like to die cut extra pieces from the coordinating dies to layer behind the images to add dimension. So I went ahead and colored the images off screen. Here's a quick look at the colors I used. And this brings me to my fourth creative block tip. That is to simply just take a break and walk away. I left my craft room and put on a movie in another room and did some coloring. Coming back to a project later always gives me a fresh perspective. Also, it can be tricky to color images that have already been die cut and keep them still. I like to place them on a full sticky note to keep them in place while coloring. To finish up the card, I stamped the sub-sentiment from the Love Win stamp set along the bottom with black pigment ink. I heat set it off camera since pigment ink stays wet longer. Once it was dry, I started hearing all the colored pieces on top. I added those additional die cut shapes to the back of the stamped pieces for dimension. I decided to stack the critter images and finish off the design with a die cut heart. I added glossy accents to both heart images and the cat's glasses for some shine. I also used a black glaze pen on the critter's eyes to make them stand out more. This brings me to my last creative block tip. That is to look at your past work for inspiration. I used this previous card as inspiration for today's card. I like the way I stacked the critters, so I replicated that idea with today's images. I hope these tips will be helpful the next time you experience creative block. Thank you for spending some time with me today. I've linked to all the supplies used in the description below. Please hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more ReverseConfetti videos. Have a great day and happy crafting!